So it looks like we're up and running. We're good to go, Mr. David? All right, so we have the lower third tracking Hurricane Beryl. I want to make sure everything is working A-OK on my audio before we get started. For those who are up on this early, man, what day is it? Monday. It's Monday morning. All right, we are tracking Hurricane Beryl. We've been tracking Beryl for a long time, since it was a strong hurricane in the Caribbean Sea. Now it's a hurricane category 1 on this Monday morning at 2:51 for those who are up right now. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. For Amy, when are we expecting rain? So in the city, not much. We'll see some cloud cover. It'll be a little breezy this morning and this afternoon. And a few passing showers towards the morning and afternoon, but that's about it. All the moisture with Beryl will be farther east. So don't drive to Houston, anywhere I-10 eastbound. That's where conditions will deteriorate and get worse and worse. So big takeaway for today's weather, of course, Beryl is making headlines, but anywhere in southeast Texas from Gonzales eastward towards Columbus, towards Katy and Houston in southeast Texas, that's where rain is going to be nonstop today. Towards the evening hours tonight through early Tuesday, that's when things will improve. Thankfully, it's not going to be a slow-moving system. It'll be pretty fast. It'll be moving to the north around 10 to 20 miles an hour. So it's not going to be like Harvey at all, because Harvey was slow and it stalled out over one area for a long amount of time. But Beryl, on the other hand, will be moving fast up I-45 towards northeast Texas by Tuesday and Wednesday. It's really today, this morning, all morning long for Houston specifically, or they're expecting the most amount of rain for that part of the state. Anything for San Antonio? Yeah, unfortunately not. You know, if it were to make, if it made landfall, so it's going to make landfall probably the next 30 minutes or less. Its edge of the eye, the outer eye wall, is right over Matagorda Bay right now, but when we get closer on radar, we'll show you right here, the sensor of the eye has to make landfall. So the outer edge of the eye is moving over Matagorda Bay as we speak, as of 2:53 in the morning. But the sensor of the eye, which I'll zoom in right for you, I'll stop the clock right here, 2:53 a.m., and I'll zoom in for you guys. That sensor of the eye has to make landfall. So you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's the center of circulation. I'll actually draw it out for you. So there's Pulaski, Seadrift, Port Lavaca, where our meteorologist Paul Morales is at. That is the center of Beryl, Category 1 hurricane right now. Winds over 74 miles an hour. It reached Category 1 status about less than an hour ago, probably about 1:45 to 2 a.m. is when the advisory came out from the Hurricane Center. So that is Beryl right now, and the edge of the eye is now moving on land. But remember, it has to be the center of the eye moving over land to make an official landfall, which, by the way, since it's moving north at like 12, 15 miles an hour, it'll be over land officially, a landfall, probably by 3 to 3:15, maybe as late as 3:30. So very quickly, in the next half hour or less or earlier. It looks like it'll make landfall in Matagorda Bay on the eastern side of the bay. Because remember, Port Lavaca, which, by the way, that's where Paul Morales is at. He'll have a live update later on this morning on KENS 5 at 4:30 through 7 a.m. We'll have periodic updates later this morning on KENS 5, on air and online as well. But anyway, so Pulaski in the eye wall, which, by the way, that's where they're experiencing probably hurricane force winds. And we'll take a look at that at sustained wind speeds at the surface right now, observations. We'll take a look at that in a second. But where Paul is at, Port Lavaca, Pulaski, across Matagorda Bay, which is this one right here. I don't know if you can see my pencil. That's where they're experiencing hurricane force winds, probably on the range of 70 to 100 miles an hour on wind gusts. So, and same thing for Bay City towards Galveston. Remember, anywhere on the eastern side of these tropical systems, storms, hurricanes, whatever the strength is, that's where we get all the tropical bands of rain training thunderstorms on the eastern side. On the western side, it draws in dry air from the north, and you don't get much. So we have Jeremy Baker, one of our other meteorologists and reporters. He's at Rockport, and they're not going to see much. They may see some coastal flooding along the canals and along the coast, but aside from that, and a few passing showers, the west side of the storm is always the dry side. But the east side of the storm where you get all these onshore winds, by the way, from the south and southeast, that's where the flooding comes in two different ways. You have coastal flooding, storm surge, in other words, water being pushed inland because of the winds, onshore winds just pushing water inland. And then you get also, of course, the heavy tropical bands of rain just causing so much rain from aloft and at the surface. So you're getting hit by two directions, a 1-2 punch on the eastern side of any tropical storm or any hurricane. Now, if you're just joining us, it is a Category 1 hurricane. We got an advisory and an update from the Hurricane Center and from reconnaissance data that it has reached 74 miles per hour plus on its sustained wind speeds. So anyone in Seadrift, Palacis, Matagorda Bay, Port Lavaca, all the way pretty much into Bay City and on the eastern side of that county region, that's where they're experiencing hurricane force winds at this moment. And again, for it to make an official landfall, the center of the storm has to move over land, which probably, again, it's imminent. I mean, it's probably, let's say, 8, 9, 10 miles away from shore. Its outer edge eye wall has made it on shore. Its outer edge eye has made it on shore, but the center of the eye has not. So that's what we need to officially declare and call for a landfall for Beryl. Okay, so back to the stats. We'll take a look at winds and all that in a second. Just want to make sure we're all up to date. So this is Beryl as of the 3 a.m. advisory. You know, we do hour by hour from the Hurricane Center, but you can see winds are over at 80 miles an hour, moving northwest at 10, pressure 982. And we're right, again, near landfall. Probably the next 5 to 15 minutes, maybe half an hour or so. It's about 10 miles away from land, the center of circulation, that is, with all the rain moving towards Houston and southeast Texas. All right, Clay. Yeah, so we talked about Port Lavaca. They're experiencing probably hurricane force winds right now. And by the way, so that's satellite. This is a look at radar. This is a look at a flood advisory for Matagorda County, by the way, and for Brazoria County until 4:45, and that's probably going to be extended for hours. It was just issued by the Weather Service in Houston, but that part, anywhere from there to Galveston, to the Houston Metro and areas along I-10, this is just going to be the trend for the next 6 to 10 hours. Non-stop rain on the eastern side. It is going to be rain, shower, thunderstorm after thunderstorm. What we call thunderstorms that are training after one another, and that's going to continue to be the trend for the next several hours. So we'll give you updates here on KENS 5, online and on air as well. If you have any questions, again, let me know. So we were talking about the winds, and that's radar. So here are the current wind speeds. Now, keep in mind, this is going to change minute by minute. We're going to get observation in every minute or so, and I'll zoom in. There we go. So as you can see, Beeville, San Antonio, we're just on the outer edge, the outer periphery of Beryl. So we're not seeing much of a impact. But notice Port Lavaca, that they're seeing winds over 25 to 35 miles an hour. And Lake Jackson, probably near 35 to 40. But we need to add, if we can, let's see if we can do this on real time. So bear with me. Let me see if I can add in Matagorda County regions. I don't know if I can do that. Let's see. So that's METAR wind speed. Locations in this list are not valid. Okay, well, let's see if I can add it to here. Because it'd be a good idea to have something, so we can get Palacis at probably the closest location we can get right now. So we just updated. So current winds out of Palacis are 52 miles an hour, which is not registering with the, the National Hurricane Center's advisory, but I imagine as the eye continues to close in on Matagorda Bay, again, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, that'll start to increase dramatically. I imagine up to 70 to 80 miles an hour. So that's a look at current observations. Aransas Pass getting in some good rain, but that's farther west of the eye. So Aransas Pass, Corpus Christi, not going to see much impact. They'll see some coastal flooding on the outer edge of it from the northwest, but all the onshore winds and the significant storm surge will be towards Galveston, Houston, and southeast Texas. So let's see. I'm trying to scroll down. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, SA is not getting any rain, unfortunately, Yolanda. Wish we could see a few. I mean, we may see a few showers, but that's about it. We're not going to see much. We're on the dry side of the storm. Anytime you have a hurricane or tropical storm, the western side, the left side of the storm is always the dry side because it pulls air in from the north, while on the eastern side, it's pulling in air from the south and southeast from the Gulf of Mexico, from the water source. That's why you get all the rain, as you can see, is heading towards Houston as we speak. Gene, does Corpus have their own weather station advisory, or are we theirs too? No, they have their own weather service in Corpus Christi. It's at the airport, Corpus Christi International. And then we have our own weather service here in San Antonio. It's in New Braunfels, northeast of San Antonio on I-35. Priscilla, no rain again. Yeah, I know. You know, if this made landfall, you know, near Brownsville, near Corpus Christi, we would get rain. But remember, on that eastern side, we don't get anything. So the fact that it's just trended farther away to the east just steals the rain from us and all the moisture associated with it. Now, not to say we won't see rain. There will be a couple of tropical bands on the western side that try to wrap around Beryl later on today through the morning and maybe towards the afternoon. But it's going to be a long shot, and these bands of rain are very narrow. So they could extend anywhere from Gonzales to I-35 to San Antonio to Floresville to Beeville to Carn City near Cuero. So it's an outside chance, probably about 20 to 30% opportunity at seeing some rain associated with Beryl today for San Antonio. But the farther west you are from this storm, the less and less chance you're going to see any potential from Beryl, unfortunately. So just to reiterate, we talked about this earlier, not landfall just yet, but it is very close. As of the last scan on radar, on sweeping radar, it's getting farther inland. And remember, the sensor of the eye needs to pass over land, which, by the way, it's just about there. So again, there's the sensor of circulation. Perfect. And there is a flood advisory, flood warning, by the way, for Brazoria and Matagorda County until 4:45. This will likely get extended because, of course, rain's not going to stop in that area. There's the sensor right here, the sensor of the eye, and that needs to make landfall. That needs to move onshore to declare an official landfall, which, take a look, it's about 12 miles or so offshore. So, and this system is moving at about 12 to 15 miles per hour. So in less than an hour, probably less than half an hour, we're looking at landfall across Matagorda County and eastern Matagorda Bay, east of Palacios, which does put, let's see, Bay City and the western half of Matagorda Bay in the eye wall. Heavy rain, hurricane force winds. By the way, latest advisory puts 75-mile-an-hour winds around the eye wall. But that's the advisory, that's the stats from the Hurricane Center. If we look at real-time data, which I'll go to right now, this will only increase. But anywhere along the bay, that's where winds are maxing out, probably over hurricane force winds. Port Lavaca, 28 to maybe 40-mile-an-hour gusts. This is sustained wind speeds, so 28 in Port Lavaca. Sustained wind speeds at Palacios, that's 53 miles an hour. That's tropical storm force, that's 40 plus. But, you know, to see hurricane force winds, that's over 74 miles an hour. And I anticipate as it moves farther inland, as Palacios gets in on more of the eye wall, which it is in, it extends about 25 miles out from the center. That's where we're expecting probably gusts over 60 to 70 miles an hour. And let me just double check. This is actually probably gusts. So let's just see. Yeah, no, we want rain, guys. I know. I'm sorry. We want rain, but it's not going to be anywhere near San Antonio. It's all going to be towards Houston and southeast Texas. I'm sorry, Gabe. I'm sorry, Clay. I'm sorry. I know. We want rain, but it's not coming anywhere near us, guys. But that's the look at observation and current wind speeds across southeast Texas. And it'll make landfall within the next half hour in Matagorda Bay. Let's take a look at futurecast and regarding a couple of things, storm surge, winds, and rain across the region. You can see right here, 3 to 4 a.m., making landfall near Matagorda Bay. winds gusting over 50 miles an hour. And then as it makes landfall through 4, 5 a.m., it moves farther inland. And when it moves farther inland, it loses the water source, but it's still close to the Gulf, which is why it's going to swing in so much rain at Houston, Galveston Bay towards Port Arthur, western Louisiana. All of southeast Texas is under the threat for flash flooding. As a matter of fact, flash flood watches for that part of the state have been already issued. Likely going to see some high water spots, quick amounts of flooding, in just about 6 to 10 hours in that part of Texas. Clay, I know, I'm sorry, man. We want rain, but we're not going to get anything from Beryl, unfortunately, in San Antonio. But the farther east you go down I-10, that's where you could see more rain towards Gonzales. But I'll show you some of the rain forecasts. For example, this is a high resolution model. We'll go back to future wind speeds in a second, but look at this. It just falls off a cliff. We are not going to see much, unfortunately. This is actually going until Thursday, but we'll backtrack it. So best rain chance for East Texas is through about Tuesday morning. I would say by Tuesday afternoon, it all moves north, and we're done with the rain for that part of the state. But yeah, that is a look at future rainfall. I mean, you can see as I zoom in, there's literally a dividing line of cloud cover and rain in that part of the state. So again, let me go back to it. That is the hurricane list, and there you go. So we zoom in, and you'll see in some of these localized pockets between Sugar Land, Houston, the metro, and that East Texas region, Galveston, there will be a few areas that pick up more than 6 to 7 inches, maybe up to 8 to 9 in some localized pockets. But the farther west you go, unfortunately, you're looking at less and less rain. A big 0 for San Antonio. We will see a few passing showers, but it's going to be isolated, widely scattered. Not going to see much, though, in our area. Because, again, these spin counterclockwise. These storms spin counterclockwise. So what you get is onshore winds from the east that draws in rain, tropical bands of rain. And on the northwest side, where we just get dry air. As a matter of fact, that might actually heat up our temperatures by the afternoon. We're looking at highs probably right around where they've been the last several days, mid-90s, 95, 96 to maybe 97 here in the San Antonio area. But the farther east you go, that's where you pick up on higher tropical weather threats, which, by the way, peak storm surge from Matagorda Bay all the way to Galveston will be probably on the range of, on average, 2 to 6 feet. But there will be a few areas that go above that, maybe 6 to 9 feet, based on hurricane force winds on the latest update from Beryl, which is over 74 miles an hour. From the observations, though, we're not seeing that. But of course, this is going to update minute by minute as we get more information and as the storm makes landfall within the next half hour or so. And until then, we're answering questions and things like that. Corpus will be missed, Stephanie, as in they're going to be missed by the storm. Yeah, they are not going to see much in the way of impacts for the Corpus Christi area from Rockport to Baffin Bay. They're not going to see much in the way of impacts. Did anyone put a life jacket on? So, no, Gabe. No power. My sister, oh, Gabe. All right, so yes, that's the latest on Beryl. Any more questions? We'll be on here for a little while, guys, so giving you all updates minute by minute, hour by hour on Hurricane Beryl. Let's put that full screen. So that's the current winds. Here's radar. Let's double check. There we go. There's the satellite image. Looks a lot better on satellite. It's spending more time over water, which is helping with some intensification. It did not rapidly intensify, but it was a gradual strengthening from Mexico all the way to the Texas coast. When it launched off the Yucatan, I think winds were between 40 and 60 miles an hour. It was completely disorganized. It was still a tropical storm, but on its approach to Texas, a gradual strengthening. It was battling wind shear and some dust in the atmosphere, which is why it didn't intensify quickly. But it is now a hurricane. If you're just joining us, it is a Category 1 and winds over 74 miles an hour. Sustained wind speeds around the sensor, specifically on that northern and northeastern side, the front right quadrant, probably on the range of 75 to 80 miles an hour. But again, we've been checking on observations, and it looks like right now winds are gusts between 50 and 65 miles an hour from the latest observation. What is Port Lavaca getting? Lots of rain and high winds. So let's take a look. So Port Lavaca, which is, by the way, where our meteorologist Paul Morales is stationed at for live shots later on this morning. Tune in to Ken's 5 this morning for all that. And Jeremy Baker's in Rockport, but yeah, Paul Morales, he is covering the storm in Port Lavaca, which, by the way, there's Palaces. That's Matagorda Bay. There's Port Lavaca. They're within the eye wall, pretty much about 25 to 30 miles, stretching from the center, which is right about here, about 40 miles away from the center. So you have to be about 25 miles away from the center to see the hurricane force wind. So Port Lavaca probably seeing wind gusts between 35 and 45, maybe 50 miles an hour. Towards Palaces, probably on the range of about 50 to 60. Maybe 70, and again, as the eye makes landfall in the next half hour, we'll see wind speeds really start to pick up. Yeah, just a coastal breeze. Yeah, I mean, if you lived on the coast, I mean, you're used to hurricanes, you're used to tropical storms. Category 1 can be dangerous, especially life-threatening storm surge, but coastal counties have dealt with this before, and for some, it is a light breeze. Michael, any flooding in Danbury? Little sister lives there and isn't answering the phone. I'll check that in a little bit, Mr. Michael. Can't be scared. Hey, some people are, man. This is a hurricane. Let's see. Let's just erase that. So again, the eye hasn't made landfall yet. A little less than half an hour from that. It looks like in eastern Matagorda Bay, southeast of Palaces, is where it's going to make landfall, probably around 3:30 to 3:45 later this morning. Let's see. So, let's see Danbury. Let's just double check that real quick. Let me put it on satellite or radar real quick on looping. So that's a look at zeroing in on landfall. This is a look at Beryl as a whole. Very large system. I mean, let's see. Before I get to your question, Michael, I'm just going to readjust the camera and get it right about here. And I need to look up something real quick, so bear with me. So Category 1, winds at 80 miles an hour around the center of Beryl. And that's radar. So all the rain associated with it on the eastern side, northeastern side. Houston about to get slammed with some pretty good rain. Let me zoom out. Give me 1 second. So Danbury's probably... How many? Probably about 40 miles north of Freeport, which is southwest of Galveston. So let me look at the Danbury area, Michael. Give me 1 second. Let me zoom in. So let's see. I wish Freeport would. There's Angleton. So for Angleton, winds probably on the range of 30 to 50 miles an hour. In regarding gusts, sustained wind speeds are probably less than that, but right now they're just getting some pretty good tropical rain, which is just the beginning. I don't think they're included in that. They might be actually, the flash flood warning. Yeah, so Angleton isn't included in a flood warning until 4:45. Again, just to reiterate, this is probably going to be extended for hours on end until Beryl moves farther north. But again, Matagorda County, Brazoria County, underneath a flash flood warning until 4:45 in the morning. This does look like it includes parts of Galveston, and wouldn't be surprised if the entire eastern side, one way or the other for the next 4 to 6 hours, a flood advisory or a flood warning will be issued for that part of southeast Texas and along the Texas coast. So that's where the rain is heaviest on the eastern side. Hurricane is moving Alexandria, probably about 12 miles an hour. And the eye is about 10 miles offshore. So let's show you. So yeah, the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, it's moving at about 10 miles an hour towards the north and northwest, which has been fluctuating in speed. It's been going between, 10 and 20 miles an hour, probably for the last 24 hours or so. Of course, Michael, you're very welcome. Catherine, you're in Victoria, and we haven't gotten any rain. Yeah, I mean, anywhere on the western side of the storm, Catherine, you're not going to see much. You'll see gusty winds at times in Victoria, maybe a couple of showers through the morning, but it's on that northern side pointing east and basically including all of Houston and around Houston from Bryan, College Station, all the way down to Galveston. That's where they're expecting the highest amount of rain, where it could go up to 7 to 8 inches of rain through tonight. So Victoria, San Antonio, Corpus Christi, up into maybe Seguin towards Gonzales. We're on that dry side. If you look closely, you can kind of see the wind barbs. I'll zoom in and show you. These are the wind speeds. So notice on the eastern side of the storm, winds are coming in from the southeast. Onshore winds that's bringing in and just ushering in all the rain for Galveston and Houston. But notice where Victoria is and Corpus Christi, San Antonio. You have those northeast winds, and what that's doing is just driving in extremely dry air, and that's leading to just less of a rain coverage in our area, which is why any tropical storm, any hurricane that makes landfall, there's a wet side of the storm and a dry side, and unfortunately we're on the dry side. If it made landfall in Brownsville or Corpus Christi, we would be on the wet side. We'd be seeing more rain in San Antonio, near Victoria, Corpus Christi, Rockport, but unfortunately we're just on the dry side as it makes landfall in Matagorda Bay in the next half hour or so. How bad is it going to hit Port O'Connor? So Port O'Connor is just south of Port Lavaca. So let's go to radar and show you where Port O'Connor is. So we're switching up the angle. So there's Seadrift, right? There's Port Lavaca, there's Palaces. Port O'Connor is right in this area right here. It's just, let's see how many miles southeast of Port Lavaca. About 15 miles southeast of Port Lavaca. So they're probably seeing winds on the range of, let's stop the clock. So it's currently raining heavy in Port O'Connor right now. That's pretty heavy rain, maybe some lightning here and there. It's mostly just tropical downpours, which by the way come down in buckets. And when it's just one after the other, thunderstorm, shower after shower, tropical downpour after tropical downpour. This is where we're expecting a flash flooding threat. And then when you go east towards Palaces, towards Galveston, that's where they're expecting the most amount of rain. But Port O'Connor is technically within the eye wall right now because it's about 20 to 30 miles stretching in outside the center. So let's show you wind speed. So Palaces has increased their speed on the observation. Zooming in, I would imagine Port O'Connor probably about 40 to 50 mile an hour winds right now. But notice where the eye is, and you can see it's about, based on this, because this is a model hooked up to observation, it's about 10 miles offshore. So again, 3:45, maybe 4 a.m., maybe earlier than that, it makes technical landfall because radar shows it a little farther north. These wind barbs, these wind speeds are just a little bit farther south from what we're seeing on radar. So I think we'll make landfall sometime soon, within the next half hour. But Palaces, 56 miles an hour on winds, and those are wind gusts. Port Lavaca near 20 to 28, maybe 30 miles an hour. And then Port O'Connor, since it's on that western side, we're seeing winds coming in from the north. So we'll see a lot more flooding in from the canals as opposed to the coastal regions. On the inner side of the barrier islands, I should say. You'll get offshore winds in Port O'Connor and Matagorda Bay, which will again cause flooding on the canal side, on the interior barrier island side, which does still result in flooding because it's still pushing water just from a different direction. Whereas in Galveston, it's pushing water from the south and southeast, but in Matagorda Bay, Palaces, Port Lavaca, Port O'Connor, that's going to be pushing water from the north, which is going to cause offshore winds and flooding along the canals and the barrier islands. So that's something we'll watch very closely. Is Tyler going to get hit at all? I mean, so let me show you the forecast cone. It will bring some rain to northeast Texas towards Tyler. Cat. So let's show you the forecast cone. So that's the latest on wind speeds. Let's see. So, and we'll show you future radar too. We'll show you some of the forecast models. If you're just joining us, San Antonio, not going to see much, but anywhere east of Gonzales towards Houston, that's where they're underneath, especially towards Galveston and Houston, a hurricane warning and or a tropical storm warning, depending on where you're watching from. So let's zoom this in and then fix the position. So Tyler is east of Dallas, from what I understand. Never visited Tyler, but it's east of Tyler. Yeah, east of Dallas. So there it is right there. So Tyler will get some rain, but remember, the western side is the dry side, the eastern side is the wet side. So I think if Tyler does see anything, it'll be some gusty winds probably by tonight through Tuesday morning. Winds gusting near 40 to 45 miles an hour for Tyler tonight. And most of the rain will be east of Tyler, unfortunately. Towards Louisiana, far east Texas. Tyler may see a few showers tonight, but again, it's mainly going to be east across East Texas and north of Houston. Up I-45, pointing east towards Louisiana. So let me just adjust this real quick, and then we'll get back to radar and your questions. So let's just double check that. Perfect. So that is a look at the latest timeline. So it makes landfall sometime in the next half hour or so, and then goes through East Texas through tonight, and then emerging over Arkansas as a tropical depression or a remnant low by Tuesday morning. That'll be a rainmaker for that part of the country, but the flooding threat will be East Texas, Houston to western Louisiana for most of today. And it'll be moving fast. I mean, it'll be moving quick towards Arkansas by tomorrow. So yeah, that's the update on if it's going to hit Tyler. Just a few showers, gusty winds, and most of the rain east of Tyler and towards Louisiana later on tonight. Flooding threat this morning, I should say, for Houston, and with storm surge as well. All right. How bad will Conroe get? So let me show you. That's north of Houston. I have some family in the Conroe area. So let's show you. That's satellite. Let's show you. This is a forecast model. Depending on how it initializes, and it's initializing pretty well. Okay, so eastern Matagorda Bay, we'll kind of center this on the camera. And we'll leave it right there, and then let's just zoom it out as we progress through time. So Conroe, from what I understand, is north of Houston. Yeah, north of Spring, which I have family in Spring. Okay, so let's save this and show you the hour by hour for Houston, Spring, and for Conroe for the next 6 to 12 hours in that area. Again, just to reiterate, San Antonio, we'll see some breezy winds, maybe a passing shower later this morning. Heaviest rain, bulk of activity farther east. So we'll do this hour by hour. So this is 6 a.m. this morning. This is 11 a.m. this morning. And I'll zoom in on Houston in a second. This is 3 o'clock, and then it moves way away from our region by midnight tonight, with a couple of tropical feeder bands moving to Louisiana by tonight and tomorrow morning. Okay, so right here, as it makes landfall between now and about 4:30, probably sooner than that, it's going to move into Bay City. Let me adjust the winds so you can actually see the cities, because that's distracting. Of course, I'm doing this all real time, so bear with me, y'all. So let's see. So let me just do this, and then let me actually bring it below the cities. So I'm going to it'd be underneath this position, and then top of drape group. Perfect. We're getting there slowly but surely. Gonna bring this underneath the city so you guys can see it a lot better. That should help a lot. Okay, so now you can actually see the city names. So we'll talk about Conroe, Spring, Northern Houston, and Houston Metro all right now. Is there any other storm currently forming out there? We had a tropical wave behind Beryl a few days ago, but from what I understand, it fizzled out. And from what I can see, there are no other storms in the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean, or the Gulf of Mexico right now. So just to answer your question, Beryl is the only storm out there. Early July, we do see tropical storms and hurricanes. It is a little early in the season to see this kind of activity, but this is where we are, and we are tracking Beryl as we speak. Okay, so through 6 a.m., now you can see the city's a little bit better. Making landfall sometime between now and about 4 a.m. across Matagorda County, southeast Texas, coastal Bend. Likely as a Category 1 hurricane. Hasn't made official landfall as of yet, but let me just double check. I'll double check that in a second. From what I understand, it has not. Its eye is basically almost over land as we speak, but I will confirm that as before we get going. And we'll talk about Conroe, North Houston in just a bit, because I know people are asking about Houston and the metro and how much rain they're expecting in a second. Let me just, before we get there, let me just double check on if it has made landfall yet, because the Hurricane Center will typically declare landfall. So let's just, it's close to landfall, yeah, and it's going to be in Matagorda Bay. We've seen wind gust observations up to 89 miles an hour in the eye wall. We talked about this earlier. Palacios towards Port O'Connor, probably on that range of 60 to 80 mile an hour gusts at this point. Of course, we're getting updates by the minute, and we'll show you that in a second, but Beryl has not made an official landfall as of yet, but it is very, very, very close. We're about probably 15 minutes away from landfall. Let's just double check on everything. Yeah, it's about to make its landfall in a little bit. Let's just see. Let's see. Yeah, it's imminent. I mean, it's very close. So before we talk about Futurecast in Conroe and Houston Spring, we'll talk about it in a second, but I just want to make sure we're covering it by the minute. Okay, so as you can see, as I stop the clock, it's imminent. I mean, again, the sensor of this storm, the sensor of the eye needs to push over land, and we've been tracking it for the last, we've been on since 2:45 or so, and it is imminent. You can see right here is the sensor of the eye, and it's about 6 to 7 miles away from making landfall, and it's moving north at about 10 miles an hour, so it's just about there. Not officially, but we're almost there. It's about to make landfall very, very soon. And we're tracking Hurricane Beryl on this Monday morning. If you have any questions, let me know. So we were talking about Futurecast. There is Beryl as we speak. If you're just joining us, all the rain. We have tropical storm to hurricane force winds on the northern side from Bay City all the way down to Seadrift, Port Lavaca, Palacios, Vanderbilt, Victoria, seeing a few passing showers. We had a few people ask about Victoria, watching from Victoria, not seeing much activity. Again, on the western side of the eye, you get the dry side of the storm. On the eastern side, you get all those onshore winds, and that brings in all the heavy rain, the tropical feeder bands that will result in some flooding for that part of Texas later on this morning and through today as well. All the way up into Manville, which I have some friends and family up in Manville as well. Okay, so back to the original question. We were talking about Futurecast and for northern Houston. Sorry, I get distracted. Let's see. Okay, so now as it makes landfall in Matagorda Bay later this morning, this is a forecast model, so take it with but towards Bay City, that's where they could experience hurricane force winds around 6:30 this morning. Same thing with Brazoria County, Palacios, anywhere around this eye wall towards Manville around 6 and 6:30 this morning. Probably hurricane to tropical storm force winds. That's anywhere from 40 to 80 miles an hour with higher wind gusts possible. That's 6:30 this morning. Fast forwarding to about, let's stop the clock around 8 a.m. this morning because that's when people start driving out, right? So stopping the clock there and then zooming in. So this is around, obviously Alvin towards Angleton. Angleton, it's going to get gusty today. We had a few folks commenting from Angleton and near Danbury, southwest of Houston. It's going to get gusty today around 8 a.m. Probably, again, 40 to 60 miles an hour on those gusts because if you're on the eastern side of the storm, that's where you get the brunt of hurricane force winds. On the western side, you will get that, and also, obviously, the tropical bands of rain it won't extend far as west here in San Antonio, but for Garwood, Sealy, Brenham, Schulenburg, Katy, I-10 West, that's where they're expecting some pretty damaging winds on the range of probably 50 to 70 miles an hour. And the darker colors you see is the heavier bands of rain, and that's just going to continue minute by minute, hour by hour, which is going to result in that flash flooding threat. So that's 8 a.m. to this morning, fast forwarding to about 11 a.m. That's when the storm center, let's just bring this back a little bit. That's when the storm center moves north of Houston, or be right over Houston, 9:30 to 10:30 later this morning. That's where it'll be impacting, it'll be impacting Conroe, Spring, anywhere around the Houston metro, and especially north towards Huntsville and College Station, Bryan area, I-45. That's where it'll be impacting that area for the next 6 to 10 hours. But the center will be moving over that area, that region, about 9:30 to 10:30, and that's where Conroe, Spring, Liberty, Baytown, Houston Metro, Bryan, Prairie View, Katy, all will see the strongest winds at that point in time, between 9:30 and 10:30. That's when the eye, or the center of circulation, will be moving over that part of Houston later this morning. Winds will be moving over, again, 50, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. It will weaken pretty quickly over land as it loses that water source, but keep in mind, it's still near the Gulf. It's going to still swing a lot of moisture in y'all's direction. And then it moves farther northeast by 3 o'clock today. Couple of lingering passing showers for San Antonio, Austin, Victoria, Houston, and then the deep tropical bands of rain move farther east. Now for Tyler, we were talking about that today, or at least this morning. I do think still most of the rain will be east of Tyler, but you will see a few storms in Tyler this afternoon and tonight, and some gusty winds probably on the range of, again, 30 to 50 miles an hour on wind gusts in northeast Texas, east of Dallas and east of I-45. Zooming out, showing you by about midnight tonight and late tonight. All this is reemerging over land, tropical bands of rain moving farther north, and this will be a rainmaker for northeast Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi by Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon. So this is not going to be a stalling system. This will not be a slow-moving system. It'll be moving pretty quickly across East Texas later on today. So that's the latest on Futurecast for the Houston Metro, Southeast Texas, and for specifically areas like Conroe and Spring and north of the Metro. Unfortunately, San Antonio, if you're just joining us, just going to see a few passing showers, additional cloud cover, and some breezy winds. But most of the rain today will be east towards Houston, where they are underneath a flash flooding threat for that part of Texas. Okay, so we talked about Conroe and Spring. Gabe, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Tornado warnings, are there any? I've just seen flash flood warnings. There are no current tornado warnings, but that's a good point. That's a good question, Sadie, because on tropical systems, whether it's a storm or hurricane, winds are moving so fast. They're moving at like 70 to 90 miles an hour, right, over water. But once it pushes over land, you get friction. The storm starts to slow down at the surface, but the winds aloft are still going fast, and that friction creates turning in the atmosphere, and that can sometimes cause tornadoes on the outer feeder bands of tropical systems. No areas of rotation. Let me look at that, because that's a good point. Right now, just flood warnings, though, just to answer your question. But no tornado warnings as of yet, but it is something to watch with tropical systems. So this is velocity. This is taking a look at winds, direction. So this is going based on the Houston radar. Red colors represent winds moving away from the radar, and green and the brighter blue colors represent winds going towards the radar. So as you can see, all the onshore winds moving in from the southeast, but all the other winds towards Wharton Bay City near Matagorda Bay moving in from the northeast and away from the radar. So all you're seeing right now is just strong onshore winds, which, by the way, we'll show you wind observations in a second. But just to sample some of this data, you can see the radar is picking up near Bay City, wind gusts near 80 to 85, maybe 90 miles an hour, 65 to 70 near Pulaski. Offshore winds 90 plus, which is matching up with some of the, the guidance and the observations from satellite, from the Hurricane Center. In Galveston, the radar is estimating winds near 65 miles an hour. Towards Manville, 38 to 40 miles an hour. Southwest of Houston, 60 to 70 miles an hour. So it just shows you again the winds moving away from the radar and the greens and blues and more vibrant colors moving towards the radar. But we watch this, we use velocity, because once you see green and red matching up very closely, that represents rotation, and sometimes you can get tornadoes on the outer bands of tropical systems. But right now, no tornadoes as of yet. We'll watch this very closely for our friends and neighbors in Southeast Texas and Houston and towards Pulaski and Bay City. All right, so we talked about that. Anyone know the forecast for Victoria, Texas? Probably Savannah. I would say scattered showers, winds near 20 to 40 miles an hour between now and about 11 a.m. Otherwise, mostly cloudy skies for Victoria, but most of the rain for Victoria will be east. A few passing showers for that area, with most of the rain towards Houston. So that's just kind of a quick forecast for Victoria and for the coastal bend. Ivan, hello. Ivan, what's going on? Yeah, and no thunder or lightning. I mean, there may be a couple of hit or miss areas, but these are just tropical downpours that come down so fast. But in terms of like severe weather, like hail or straight line winds, not a problem, but tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds, that'll be a problem as well. Let's see. Okay, so Della? Sorry, my phone is so low. Let's see. Rosenberg. Let's see. Let me just double check this real quick. So there's that flood warning in effect until 4:45. Let's see. Just give me a second. I have to double check something real quick. All right. All right, so to answer your question, Della, Rosenberg, Texas. So that is southwest of Houston. Okay, so just a quick, this just popped in. Weather Service in Houston just issued a tornado warning for southwest Houston. That includes Brazoria and Fort Bend County until 4 a.m. Now Rosenberg, let's double check, because Rosenberg is actually southwest of Houston. So, okay, so Della, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. That for Rosenberg, you're seeing moderate rain, moderate to heavy tropical bands of rain. Same thing with Sugar Land, Greatwood, Beasley. Now there is a tornado warning. Rosenberg technically out of the tornado warning area, but anywhere in this area, let me just zoom in on to any communities that may be in this area. Thompson's, Long Point, Fairchilds, Texas 36, Pleak, towards Needville, all within this tornado warning southwest of Houston. So if you have any friends or family, it's obviously early. It is 3:39 a.m. We're watching Beryl make landfall. If it hasn't already, we'll look at the eye in just a second. That's where the latest tornado warning has happened. We talked about the possibility of tornadoes in some of these outer bands. Let me show you velocity. Let me save this product in the Houston Metro real quick. So there's Rosenberg. Wind's probably near Rosenberg. Let me just sample some of this data. Again, these are radar estimates. They're not exact, but wind gusts near Rosenberg, 60 miles an hour. South of Needville, 57 miles an hour. So the Weather Service in Houston is watching for some slight rotation southwest of Fresno. There has been a tornado warning issued for south of Rosenberg, south of Highway 59, southwest of Houston, and northwest of Bonnie and north of Damon. This is not including the Houston Metro, but there is a tornado warning active for that part of southeast Texas. So just to reiterate, winds probably near Rosenberg, 50 to 60 miles an hour, nonstop rain, gusty winds, and the tornado warning is issued south of Rosenberg, which includes Brazoria and Fort Bend County until 4 a.m. From what I see on velocity, there's just Not much rotation, but I think the Weather Service may be seeing some additional rotation depending on which products they're using. But nonetheless, a tornado warning is a big deal for southwest Houston region, south of, east of Wharton and north of West Columbia. So in addition to that, flash flood warnings for Brazoria and Matagorda County. This is going to continue. It's until 4:45, but wouldn't be surprised if we see that extended. It looks like the storm is just about making landfall, if not already making landfall. For Victoria, from Miss Sandra, you're not seeing much. Some breezy to gusty winds, maybe 20 to 30 miles an hour, but all the action, all the rain is way farther east towards Palacios, Point Comfort, Bay City, and towards Port O'Connor and Port Lavaca. But you can see as I zoom in right there, that's where the storm is making landfall as we speak. So let me just double check with the Hurricane Center and see if it's made an official landfall as of yet. It's very, very close. It needs to, again, if you're just joining us, the center of the eye, the center of the storm needs to push over land, which is, right around, this area. That's the center of the storm. So it's just about there. It's a few miles offshore with Beryl landfall. And I'm not getting any reception, unfortunately. Let's see. Of course, you're welcome, Della. What about Seguin, Norma? Yeah, not much for Seguin. I mean, just like San Antonio, we're not going to see much there. Maybe a few passing showers for Seguin this morning, this afternoon, but aside from a breezy northeast wind, 15 to 25 miles an hour, we're not going to see much in San Antonio, nor Seguin, nor in surrounding counties around the San Antonio metro, nor the hill country. It's all going to be east towards Houston later on today. Is San Antonio? Yeah, we're not going to get much of anything in the San Antonio metro. We wish I want more rain, but it looks like based on what we're seeing, all the model guidance is just showing all the heavy rain farther east of San Antonio today. And you can see that on a radar. I mean, the closest band of rain to San Antonio is way east. I mean, I'll measure that real quick. So here's San Antonio. The closest tropical band of rain is about 120 miles east. So our only hope for San Antonio, for Seguin, for Victoria, for example, is when it moves farther inland on its reach on the atmosphere, maybe some of these tropical bands of rain can extend towards San Antonio, towards Victoria, but it's going to be a long shot with this system. It looks like the bulk and brunt of rain will be east towards Galveston, Houston, Matagorda Bay, and southeast Texas. It will impact College Station. It will bring rain to Tyler, northeast Texas later on tonight. But in terms of for San Antonio, Corpus Christi, Victoria, south central Texas, we're just away from it. We're far removed from it. The moisture is just going to be far to the east of San Antonio, unfortunately. So closest band of rain to us is 120 miles east. And what we're hoping for is just some of these tropical bands of rain to extend farther west, but just don't think that's going to happen. So just to answer your question, unfortunately, no, don't think we're going to see much rain. As a matter of fact, let me show you this right here. This is a high-resolution forecast model. This shows you through tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., all the rain is from Katy to Sugar Land to Houston. I need to fix this real quick because Houston's number is way too far east. It should be like right here. Galveston, Port Arthur, there you go. All right, so re-uploading that. Just to answer your question about rain, Bryan, College Station towards like 1.25 inches to maybe 2 inches of rain. But after you move east of that, east of Gonzales basically, east of Luling towards Houston, that's where you just pick up on more and more rain. The farther west you go of Houston and Katy, you go west of Luling, it just drops off a cliff. Our rain amounts just drop off significantly, and we're not going to see much. We're just hoping for a passing shower this morning and this afternoon, but hopefully daytime heat helps out that. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but the bulk of rain will be east later on today, so wish we could see more. LaGrange, Irene is asking about LaGrange. You're far enough east to probably see a little bit of rain. And that is more of a possibility than San Antonio. So I would say in LaGrange towards Gonzales, down I-10, the farther east you go, the better your rain chance is. But again, just to highlight on this map, anywhere east of San Antonio, it just falls off a cliff. And then you move towards Houston, and that's where you pick up on more tropical rains. Reason being is just because of how narrow these tropical bands of rain are. You'll see as I show you radar, it'll be literally a dividing line of rain. Zooming in, you can see these tropical bands of rain are so narrow that it only provides rain for Wharton, Sealy, Gonzales, LaGrange, for example. From what I understand, it's north of Gonzales, north of Hallettsville. So there's LaGrange, for example. You may see a couple of these showers inch towards LaGrange later this morning, so that'll impact some morning driving conditions. I could see it moving towards LaGrange, Schulenburg, Columbus, Gonzales, Hallettsville. But, you know, in Luling, for example, or Seguin, San Marcos, San Antonio, and Austin, we're just hoping that one of these bands of rain just move farther west. But you can just see how divided these lines of tropical feeder bands are. And you can see the bulk of rainfall is just happening in northeast Texas. It's looking like it's just about there, making landfall. The center of the storm is basically over land. I mean, it looks like it. It is currently 347. I would say that's landfall right there. Give me a second, guys. Let me just double check on something real quick. So that's the center of Beryl. It's 347. I imagine if the Hurricane Center calls it, might be a 345, maybe an earlier landfall. Why am I not seeing anything? Give me 1 second, guys. We are live in the pre-dawn hours of Monday morning. For those joining us, thank you for staying up with us. We're watching Beryl. It's a hurricane. It became a hurricane at about 2 a.m. this morning. I think around 1:45 is when the Hurricane Center let out the latest advisory. But it jumped in wind speeds. It's over 74 miles an hour, which makes it a Category 1. But it is, I would say it's making landfall as we speak across Matagorda Bay. So I would say it's making landfall as we speak because, I mean, the center of circulation is right over land. The center of the eye is right about there. Have not received an official call from the Hurricane Center, but again, we're watching this from Texas. We're watching this from San Antonio, and it looks like the center of that eye is moving right over land, which is right about here. So I would expect a landfall will be called sometime soon. It's nearing, I'm looking at the Hurricane Center's social media page, and it looks like they're just saying it's nearing landfall. That was about 28 minutes ago, but from what I'm watching, minute by minute, hour by hour here on KENS 5, it's literally moving over land as we speak. The center of the eye is at 3:49 a.m. But of course, we'll wait for the official call, but it looks like from what I see, it's making its landfall at this hour, 3:49 a.m. on Monday morning. All right, so let's go back to the chat. Okay, what's west of San Antonio? Any rain showers approaching from the west? Not much. I mean, we talked about this earlier. Towards Sealy, I mean, if any of our regions in our eastern counties of, south central Texas see any rain, it's going to be Gonzales, Hallettsville, LaGrange, Columbus, but maybe Luling, but it's still a stretch. I think most of the tropical bands of rain, they'll try to inch their way farther west, but just to reiterate, most of the rain will be remaining east. There was a tornado warning. It is still for southwestern Houston. This does not include Rosenberg. I know somebody asked about that earlier. This is a tornado warning issued from the Weather Service until 4 a.m. Some rotation can happen on these outer tropical feeder bands. Remember, winds from a hurricane or a tropical storm are moving so fast, and then as they move over land, they're slowing down in speed. That friction in the atmosphere causes rotation in the lower to mid levels, and that will cause some isolated tornadoes that can be associated with tropical systems. People think, it's only winds, storm surge. heavy tropical rain are the main threats for hurricanes, but tornadoes happen frequently in the outer bands of tropical systems as, again, these tropical bands move on shore and they encounter the land interaction, and that causes some spin and some rotation in the atmosphere. In addition, we have flash flood warnings for Galveston all the way down to Matagorda County. Again, this is probably going to continue. Wharton towards New Gulf, El Campo. I know somebody was talking about that earlier. Sorry, I didn't get to your question. El Campo seeing some pretty good rain as we speak. This is all moving in from the north and east. And this is just going to continue for El Campo. Highway 59 south of Garwood. Bay City, Sweeney towards Blessing, Edna, Bay City, Pulaski. So this is a look at just as it makes landfall on this Monday morning. 3:45 to 4 a.m. is when I think the Hurricane Center will probably call its landfall, because it looks like it's making landfall as we speak. The center of the storm is moving pretty much right over land right there. So we'll stop the clock. It is 3:51, and there it is right there. It looks like it's making landfall across Matagorda County and Matagorda Bay, where there are flood advisories in effect for that part of the area. So I'll get to some more questions in a little bit. Give me a second. I'll take a look at winds real quick. So that's velocity. So that's a look at, so there's Lake Jackson. So I know somebody was asking about Lake Jackson. These are wind gusts. So Lake Jackson, not near the eye wall just yet, but as it moves farther north, I anticipate Lake Jackson to pick up on its wind speed through about 4:30 to 5:30 a.m. Probably we'll see wind gusts near 50 to 60 miles an hour in Lake Jackson for the next hour or two. But at the moment, moderate to heavy tropical bands of rain for Lake Jackson, and wind speeds 25 to 35 miles an hour at the moment. And we'll see wind speeds pick up. Pulaski, 47 miles an hour for probably Port O'Connor and Port Lavaca. 33, Port O'Connor probably about 40 to 50 miles an hour. You have to move right about in this area, about 20 miles outside of the eye wall to see the hurricane force winds, where I imagine they're probably gusting over 60 to 70 miles an hour outside of that eye wall. So that's just a current at wind speeds. Let me show you the forecast. So Lake Jackson, probably going to see wind speeds near 50 to 60 miles an hour through 4:30. It heads towards Sugar Land and the Houston Metro through about 8 and 9 a.m. That's where they could see winds pick up to 50 to 70 miles an hour. By that time, it's still Category 1 status, but eventually it will weaken over land. Problem is, proximity to the Gulf. Proximity to the Gulf is very close, and that'll continue to pour in moisture from the east. And I think that'll continue with the flash flood threat east of the center of Beryl. Storm surge, water, flood, inundation, on average 2 to 6 feet. I would say upwards of 5 to 6 feet for Galveston and Lake Jackson. But depending, I think since it's a Category 1, it could be up to 6 to maybe 8 feet at some areas, especially in the Barrier Islands and in towards the Lake Jackson region. That's definitely a possibility for the peak storm surge for Beryl. Just to reiterate before we go back to satellite and radar, main takeaway, we will see a few passing showers from here to Victoria, to LaGrange, to Luling, to Hallettsville, but most of the rain will be farther east of us towards Houston and that part of the area. So as a matter of fact, here's a look at a forecast model. We don't see much. That additional rain that comes in tomorrow morning will be associated with an entirely different weather system out west. So just to go back and forth, if you're just joining us, it looks like Beryl is making landfall as we speak. And from what I see on satellite, it looks like it already did, probably about 3:45 this morning. We were talking about this probably about 10 minutes ago, but the center of the eye looks like it's been over land for quite some time. Right there. I mean, bam. You'll see it right there. So landfall probably between 340 and 350 from earlier this morning. Let's just double check that. David, have you heard anything from landfall on social media?
National Hurricane Center confirmed it.
Do you know what time? Technically?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so the Hurricane Center confirmed landfall east of Sargent. No, it's a wind gust. So we're seeing wind gusts on observation sites, 80 to 90 miles an hour within the eye wall. Yeah, so just 1 minute ago, Hurricane Beryl, center of Beryl makes landfall near Matagorda, Texas. Dangerous storm surge and strong winds occurring with flash flooding expected. All right, so that's 1 minute ago from the Hurricane Center. So technically probably about 3:54 to 3:55 a.m. So what I'm going to do is make a graphic. So bear with me, guys. I'll be going over all the details in just a bit. I'm just going to say Matagorda, Texas. Matagorda Bay. I'll probably take out this text, and this will be for 3:55 a.m. because Hurricane Center just let out that information about 2 minutes ago. And from what I see, it's still a Category 1, so sustained winds are at 80 miles per hour. We'll get more updates, but this is just as of right now, like real-time data. So I'm just gonna, because this is gonna be for our morning shows. You're watching me edit weather graphics on the fly, so just bear with me, guys. Give me 1 second, and just make this look good. And then there we go. So Hurricane Beryl landfall, Category 1, winds at 80 miles an hour, right at Matagorda Bay on the eastern side. It's pretty much southeast of Pulaski. That's what I would say. Maybe about 15 to 20 miles southeast of Pulaski, but technically it's still Matagorda Bay, southwest of Galveston. All right, Maggie, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, so that is Beryl. Let me just fix a few things before we get back to your questions, everybody. Let's see. Let me just adjust one more thing before we get started. So again, if you're just joining us, it made landfall in Matagorda, Texas at 3:55 a.m. Let me just adjust this real quick. So I think we're forecasting landfall like 2:30 to 3:30, so it was a little slower. Sometimes tropical systems, hurricanes will slow down as they approach the coastline. That is just something I've noticed from years of forecasting and hurricane coverage. We'll have updates from Paul Morellis, which, by the way, meteorologist Paul Morellis is at Port Lavaca right now. He is like within the eye, probably seeing winds of 40 to 60 miles an hour. We're going to see a live report from Jeremy Baker. He's at Rockport, which again, far removed from the eye, so he'll see some gusty winds, offshore flooding from the barrier islands in the canal, and all the rain, again, is all moving towards Houston, Galveston, as Beryl makes landfall over Matagorda Bay at this hour. Okay, so we will, let's see. No, there you go, perfect. Okay, let me just make sure this graphic works. Bam, I don't know why it does that. It shows a white box first, and then there you go, perfect. So that's where it made landfall, technically at about 3:55 this morning. I wish I could, why can't I adjust the time? There we go, that's what I can, well, I'll probably do last 2 hours, right about 3:55 a.m., which I will send a our digital team, so they can use that for social. So bear with me, guys. So I'll go back to satellites, and so digital, send to web. All right, yeah, so if you're just joining us, it's Category 1, made landfall at 3:55 in the morning, winds at 80 miles an hour. From the observations we're seeing around the eye, wind gusts near 60 to 80 miles an hour, just from what the observations are showing us, and we'll show you the wind speeds in a second. Let's see, send to web. Ken's producers. Producers, Ken's weather. Beryl landfall. Attached. Hey, David, I'm going to send you a graphic, okay? And then I'll probably upload to social media as we speak. So everybody that's watching on social media, bear with me. I'll put this full screen as I get things situated. But yeah, so we're looking at landfall. Made landfall at 3:55 a.m. Matagorda Bay as a Category 1. As of the latest stats from the Hurricane Center, a hurricane, Category 1, 80 miles an hour, moving north at 12. And we'll show you the latest observation since we're looking at landfall. From what we've been seeing, we don't have access to all the data sites, but notice Port Lavaca, Palacios, latest observations, 51 miles an hour. Port Lavaca, 28. These are wind gusts. I imagine the higher wind gusts are located on the northern and eastern side, about 20 miles, 25 miles outside of the eye wall. That's typically where you get the most devastating winds, the hurricane force winds, versus towards Palacios. But I imagine, I mean, this is just an observation site, probably seeing higher wind gusts in Palacios, but at the moment we're only seeing 51. Probably similar numbers in Port O'Connor. Port Lavaca seeing 30 to 35 miles an hour for wind gusts. Lake Jackson, 26 to 30. These are just some observations, but 25 miles outside of the center, that's where we're picking up on the highest wind speeds at the surface. And again, based on satellite, latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, latest reconnaissance missions from the hurricane hunters, winds around the eye wall, especially on the northern and eastern side of Hurricane Beryl, moving at 80 miles an hour. And it should remain Cat 1 status for the next several hours as it moves farther inland. All right, so let's see. I just want to double check this real quick. Hurricane Beryl, landfall Matagorda Bay, 3:55 a.m., Category 1, 80 miles an hour. All right. So bear with me, guys. I'll answer questions in a second. Going to get ready for our 4:30 KINS 5 newscast talking about Hurricane Beryl and things like that. So just bear with me. So let's see. Hurricane